I'm Doug Tallamy from the University of Delaware. I'm an entomologist in the Department of Entomology and Wildlife Ecology, and I have been there 34 years. Yeah, it was definitely the bugs that came first for me. I didn't start to fully appreciate their interaction with plants and how vital that is to almost everything else, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. I'm essentially a behavioral ecologist. I've been studying insect behavior my entire career. But the fact that insects are essential part of food webs. If you take them out of the food web, the ecosystem collapses. And if enough ecosystems collapse, then humans disappear. That's important. And they will collapse, and they are collapsing because of the way we're manipulating plants in our built landscapes. So that's what got me interested in all of this. Because we humans have such a heavy hand on every aspect of the earth, we are gardening the entire planet. We can do that responsibly and in a productive way, or we can do it in a destructive way. And the concept that we need to garden the entire plant is new. So we're not so good at doing it in a productive way, and that's why we're all talking about this. We can get a whole lot better. One of the most relaxing, fun things that I can do is to walk around the yard and just see what's happening out there. And every year I discover species that I didn't know we had. It's easy because we have well over 1,000 species of moths right at home. Finding their larvae, what they're eating, what is eating them. They have really impressive defensive behaviors against their own predators. Impressive ways of getting around plant defenses. All that's just fascinating to me. And many of them are just extraordinarily beautiful. You just have to learn to look for them. Now, birds eat insects. Yes, we know that. Do we know how many they need to reproduce? I didn't till I learned about it. A little chickadee takes between 6,000 and 9,000 caterpillars to make one clutch of chickadees. Well, what kind of landscape is going to make 9,000 caterpillars? Which trees, which plants are going to be able to do that? And if you don't have that landscape, the chickadee can't breed. That's a common bird. Are we going to lose all our chickadees if we plant crepe myrtle? Yes, unless we have other things to balance that. So these facts have emphasized the urgency of changing the way we've done things in the past. Our interaction with nature has always been humans here, nature someplace else. It's not that we didn't like nature, we just didn't want to share our spaces with it. It was happy someplace else, and yes, we knew it was important as long as it's over there. Those days are over because we are now in so many places, there's not enough nature over there. So we now need to learn to live together, and that's the challenge. But how do we build a neighborhood that has not just humans, not just lawn, but a myriad of birds and other things that create exciting, interesting places to be? Well, I used to joke. I say, well, I want to re-landscape the world. But you know what? It's not a joke anymore. I do want to do that. We have to, as I said earlier, we have to stop viewing plants just as decorations. It doesn't mean we can't use them as decorations, but we have to, at the same time, consider all the ecological roles they play. Don't plant an oak tree because you won't live long enough to enjoy it. Well, that assumes that the oak has to be 300 years old before you can enjoy it. And that is a myth. I can enjoy that oak from the time it's an acorn every single day since then. It's doing all the things that great oaks do, just at a smaller size. And I've watched this at our house. We've planted many oaks from acorns. When they get to this tall and they're just branches coming out that way, you get a field sparrow nesting in the middle of that. They're producing polyphemus moth larvae that the birds then come and eat. They're doing the things that oaks do, just at smaller sizes. So I think that's a myth. I tell people if they want instant gratification from their oak, think of them as oak bushes, and then you get it right away. I go down south and I talk to the southern bells, and they say, well, if I put plants in my yard, snakes will come. I say, so? Well, they're poisonous. We have a few poisonous snakes in this country. You know how many people were killed by poisonous snakes last year? 1. You know how many people were killed by cars? You know how many people were killed by the common cold? On and on and on. So the risk level, our risk assessment, 370 people killed by toasters. Do we worry about toasters? We have to have accurate risk assessment when we interact with the natural world. Well, here's another myth. Everybody thinks insects are everywhere. They're just there. They don't realize it's the plants that are making them, and that insects have very specific relationships with the plants. Most of them are what we call host plant specialists. They can only eat the plant they co-evolved with. So when you bring in eucalyptus from Australia, insects from South America or North America or California, wherever we're using this, have never seen that plant before. They don't have the adaptations to be able to eat it. They don't recognize it as a plant. Same thing with crepe myrtle. That's the problem with our ornamentals. They're largely from Asia, and our insects have no evolutionary experience with those trees. So they harness the energy from the sun, and then they keep it. They don't pass it on. And if you don't pass it on, you don't have a food web, you don't have the birds, you don't have anything else that's out there. Your little space of the world can be an important component, an important part of conservation. Your land does have conservation value, but only if you put the right plants in it. A lot of people think, well, my property is just too small to contribute, but that's not true. It's attached to your neighbors, so if they participated too, then you have a bigger piece, which is attached to every place else. So, so if you're concerned about the loss of biodiversity, if you're concerned about ecosystem function, about climate change, about all the things that Mother Nature provides for us, we have to be concerned about that at home too. We can't opt out of local ecosystem functions. In order to provide function to your local ecosystem, it does not have to be 100% native. As a matter of fact, we are learning that some natives are a whole lot better than others. I could build an entirely native landscape that's very unproductive. So it's not native versus non-native, it's productivity versus not. Does that mean you can't have some accent plants that are just gorgeous? Of course not. But if 80% of the plants or plant biomass in your yard is from Asia, it's not going to work. And we've measured it where I come from, up in Delaware. That's the figure. 92% lawn and 80% of the plants are from Asia. So let's just shift that a little bit. How about 80% of the plants from where you are and then 20% accent plants? The other thing we've learned is that woody plants are a lot more powerful in terms of creating the ecosystem services we need. So if you want to play around with the color, and most people do with their herbaceous plants, make your natives or your woody plants native, and then play around with the herbaceous layer. There are ways to compromise.